And we are recording with Miss Claire Lopez on Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 at 12:50 p.m. Eastern Time. And well, I had the thumbnail from like 2 weekends ago, but uh I wanted to talk about or at least hear your thoughts on what all is going around with the USS Eisenhower and the alleged Houthis strike. And guys, if you go in the description, you can please go follow Claire on Twitter. But Miss Lopez, what do you know about it, and what can you tell me about it?
Well, I mean, specifically, not sure with the USS Eisenhower, but what we have been seeing over the last how many weeks is an all-out, program of assaults against not just Israel, but U.S. and international shipping as well by the Houthis in the area of the Gulf of Aden, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and up into the Red Sea. But this is only part of the overall picture because behind it all, of course, is the regime in Iran, which deploys its proxies, and in this case, Houthis, but also Hezbollah, also Hamas in Gaza, and to pressure what they call against Israel, what they call the axis of resistance or the ring of fire, around Israel. And that will include, of course, the United States. And as we're talking about international shipping too, which has really, the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea area have really, really caused much of international shipping to avoid those waters there and to add all kinds of extra cost to shipping and supply chain and all of that, sending the ships entirely around the continent of Africa, in either direction, rather than going through as they, had been the Bab el-Mandeb Strait on up the Red Sea and then out into the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal. And they're not, most of them, many of them at least, are not doing that anymore. So it's an Iranian directed assault really against the rest of the world, but in particular, led by the United States and of course, against Israel.
I mean, that's a way to pull in. That's a way to pull hatred from people who may have been apathetic to all of it, is to disrupt shipping lanes, right? The one thing that I think kind of everyone's affected by. I I don't think that's their intention. Um, and then is what the relations between this and Russia and Cuba. Can you go back into which is just, a headline 60 years later returning, but can you go into Russia and Cuba?
Yeah, apparently a Russian warship is putting into harbor at Cuba, and it is carrying on board um, missiles with obviously a strike range that can reach the United States. Now these are not nuclear missiles, no, but perfectly damaging missiles in any case, dangerous missiles. But I don't know about you, but maybe you have, but I have not seen any specific response from the Biden administration about that yet. Now maybe the news, that we got in the public media just broke a couple of days ago, I guess.
Hmm.
They must have known about the Biden administration intelligence community must have known about this as this ship made its way towards Cuba, must have known about that for quite a while. But as far as I have seen, not a peep at all out of them. Now, I mean, this is on top of. I mean, let's look at Cuba on top of a Hezbollah base of operations on Cuba that's been there forever, years and years, and more recently the establishment of Chinese Communist Party um, base of operations, apparently taking over the old Soviet time Lourdes intelligence collection site, and also establishing, this is China establishing a joint military training program with Cubans. And so, this is just one more instance of, the Biden administration turning a blind eye to what is going on in our own hemisphere on Cuba, 90 miles offshore of Florida, and seeming not to be bothered by any of our key adversaries in the world here. Hezbollah, which of course is an Islamic Jihad terror proxy of Iran, Russia now, and of course China.
Does this dash any hopes of de-escalation, or is this just kind of all in lockstep with further, just as a general theme,
Well, I think
escalation?
as long as this administration of ours is in office, and hopefully that's not too much longer than 5 months, or say 7 months until new inauguration. As long as it is in power, though, there is going to be this kind of disregard, in my opinion, of the most serious national security threats against the United States, that have been gathering and building, and realizing, that there's not going to be any confrontation. There's not going to be any pushback. There's not going to be even any notice taken of these building, gathering threats to U.S. national security. And even within the administration, you have FBI Director Chris Wray appearing before Congress in multiple hearings, and that's just this year that I can think of since January 2024 here. Multiple, and the most recent was just a few days ago, warning over and over and over again, the lights are blinking red for attacks, for terror attacks. And that would be inside the United States, inside the homeland. A lot of that due to the absolutely open southern border, problems with the northern border too, but we'll focus on the southern border because it's so much bigger in terms of the numbers of in the flow. But absolutely, it would appear to me anyway, that this administration is turning a deliberate and witting blind eye to any and all of these national security threats that we've just talked about, building, gathering against the United States.
Can you elaborate on Ray?
Well, Christopher Wray, of course, the director of the FBI, has, as we said, appeared before Congress multiple times to issue warnings, and he has repeated some of this language again in the most recent hearing that I think, as I said, was just a few days ago. Repeated the language of the terror threats are gathering, the lights are blinking red. This is the same language that some used trying to warn the United States ahead of the 9/11
Mm-hmm.
attacks back in 2001. It's the same language, then unfortunately disregarded. Hopefully this time not disregarded, but that language of, lights blinking red. And meaning, as Christopher Wray is explaining and has explained in the open testimony before Congress, that the threats are already inside the United States. We're here talking about Cuba, which is very real and very geographically close to the United States. But Christopher Wray is specifically addressing threats that are already present inside the United States, and that having to do again with that wide open southern border. And he's talking about all manner of threats, criminals, gang members, traffickers, meaning human traffickers, child traffickers, narco traffickers, jihadis, of course, he doesn't use that word, but that's what we're talking about, Islamic terrorists. And of course, the Chinese threat from what we know from reporters, information, jungle tigers, the special operations unit of the People's Liberation Army. And now Christopher Wray, at least in the open testimony or the notes that I saw about it, didn't maybe specify all of those areas as I've just done, but that's what he's talking about. And who's paying attention? We are, but who that can do something about it, who is paying attention?
Yeah, it makes me think of James Bamford's book, Shadow Factory, the ultra secret post 9/11 NSA. The first half of the book really go into all the FBI warnings uh leading up to 9/11, and it was essentially the same verbiage was we don't know when, where, how, but it's coming. It's coming in the
Mm-hmm.
next 90 days, and then it's coming in the next 50 days. Then it's just like the lights aren't even blinking. It's solid red. Like,
Yeah,
and it was just, where's it happening? Where's it coming from? And it was accurate, that's obviously when it came. And there's always warnings, I get that, but it wasn't fear mongering. It was pretty dead on.
yeah, it certainly was and is now. Given the lack of response from the federal level, specifically the Biden administration, Christopher Wray accepted in this case because he is sounding the warning, but across the rest of the administration, seemingly unconcerned, about these gathering threats and the warnings that are being given, which leads me to conclude that what we're going to have to do in these coming months, certainly between now and November, perhaps to include the additional 2 months until January the 20th of 2025. What we're going to need to do is to depend on local law enforcement uh, being aware of and being prepared for what's coming. And there I specifically would talk about the sheriffs, the sheriff's departments of this country, which are the sheriffs themselves, the highest, most senior law enforcement official in their county, most often, excuse me, not in every case, but most often elected to their positions in the county in which they serve. And I will note that in another couple of weeks, towards the end of June 2024, this month, the National Sheriff's Association of the United States will be holding their annual meeting in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And I will be one of the presenters for that conference. I will be chiming in by Zoom. Others will be there in person, and trying to maybe present, to them some of what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and alerting them, as well as civilians. I mean, concerned and involved, informed citizens of these different counties, that the sheriffs and the civilian citizen, American citizen population can, work together, to be aware, to be prepared, to be informed about what's coming, and to take steps to work together to protect the rest of the civilian populations of our counties.
And this would obviously be wild speculation, but is there any specific type of attack, or I guess terrorist cell, that's more probable than others based on just, the
Well, I think we're already seeing the leading edge of what I've been calling the red-green axis on our
Mhm.
streets. We certainly saw it on the campuses. Now school is mostly out, but in certain places, UCLA comes to mind. There are summer, what do they call it? Summer quarters,
Mhm.
in these schools that are continuing through the summer months. And we just saw there, like a day or two ago, UCLA, another one of these encampments. So again, red-green axis. Now, many of the students have gone home for the summer, but what does that do? That makes them available for the streets, doesn't it? To be recruited by the Reds and the Greens. The Reds, of course, communist Marxists, the Greens, the Islamic, especially Muslim Brotherhood front groups. We just saw in Washington, D.C. again this past Sunday. Another one of these, pro-terror, pro-Hamas riots involving thousands, apparently, of these protesters, and the allowing by the Washington D.C. government and Secret Service and anybody else in law enforcement, apparently, allowing these terror mobs to basically take over Lafayette Plaza or Lafayette Park. I guess it really is Park, which is right across from the White House. And there we saw in the media, the news, how they were defacing statues, defacing them with graffiti and red paint and whatever else. And there was that's all I saw, the presence of one lone park ranger, poor guy, standing there all by himself, completely unarmed. I don't even think he had a hat on. And the Hamas jihadi mobsters, throwing trash and water bottles at him, and he could do nothing. And then eventually, I think a couple of DC police department officers came along, and they were outnumbered too, and they could basically do nothing, even if they tried. So that, what I'm saying, is the leading edge of that element, the red-green axis. We saw it back in January. I'm sure we talked about this, where at the website of marchforgaza.org back in January this year, there was a tab where you could go and look at the signatories of supporters of that pro-Hamas riot. And there were over 350 groups listed at that tab, at that website, March for Gaza. If we want to know what's coming in this area this year, go to that website and look at those signatories, more than 350 of them, who's who list of the Muslim Brotherhood in America front groups, and as well of the communist Marxist organizations in the United States too. World Workers Party and Liberation Road and Freedom Road Socialist Organization and, straight up, RevCom USA and many others. So in that, I think that is going to expand and explode across our streets this summer into the fall. Now, go to what we talked about, gangs. We said gangs, coming up out of Central South America, particularly Central America. There's this new one that is actually Venezuela from South America, Tren de Aragua, which is a new and deadly
that mean?
Street gang, the Aragua train, basically. And that is a new one I believe, out of Venezuelan prison system. Of course, their prisons are now empty, and they're all here because they let them come
all
in.
The devils are here.
But what I'm getting at is the the gangs and the criminal element that are causing wreaking such havoc in communities across the United States, and that again because of the wide open southern border. So that's the gangs and the criminals, and narco traffickers fall into that category really too, especially with the trafficking of fentanyl and the continuing horrific death toll being wreaked upon American society by fentanyl and other opioids being trafficked, but fentanyl in particular, the precursors for which come out of communist China, which we know, and those precursors go to the Mexican cartels, which mix them up and then traffic them across our southern border. So criminal traffickers, drug traffickers, and then finally, the Chinese. And I mentioned jungle tigers, which we know are a special unit of the People's Liberation Army of China, which have come across our southern borders by the tens of thousands. We don't even know the numbers. What are they doing here? They're not here for the summer weather in America. They are here to cause damage, like the others, but this one coming from a nation state, organized and dispatched by a nation state, our number one enemy nation state in the world. So all of those categories, that's what I think we're looking forward to, unfortunately, this coming year and the months to come of the summer and the fall. And it's what I'll be talking about at the annual Sheriff's Association meeting in a couple of weeks in Oklahoma.
Can you expand on that? I'd never heard of that Sheriff's Association.
Right. So it is an association across the United States of the sheriff's departments of America. And every year they have an annual meeting. And this year it will be end of June in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And they will assess, they will look at, they will discuss, and with presentations from many different groups, including my own, which really is more even focused on the threats to our civilian electric grid. My group focuses on that. Super experts, which I am not scientifically speaking, but I am part of the group in any case. I worked with the much missed Dr. Peter Pry in the years when he headed up the task force on national security with particular emphasis on the EMP threat, electromagnetic threat, electromagnetic pulse threat to our civilian grid. So that is what our group will be addressing on 2 days of that conference in particular. But so we should also add to this list of potential threats, the threat to our civilian electric grid, which is not adequately protected at all, despite all the efforts of Peter Pry and others in Congress at the time too. Trent Franks from Arizona was a champion of this subject, could not get traction. But this will be part of that presentation from our group at the Sheriff's Association. And again, they're looking to be informed about specific threats that sheriffs at the local level, the county level, can and should be informed about and make preparations to be cognizant of and aware of and to counter if and when this happens. But attacks against our electric grid certainly should be added to this mix. And there, it might not be all of the above categories of threats that we just talked about, but I think certainly would include elements of the Chinese Communist Party's People's Liberation Army in the thousands here in the United States. Of course they know about our electric grid. Of course they know its weak points. Of course they know how to attack it. So all of that.
Kind of from left field, but where does the U.S., Australia, UK alliance kind of play into China, South China Sea? I mean, I know they have that the AUKUS AUKUS
I don't know how to.
nuclear submarine I guess contracting deal. How does that play into all? So obviously this is all in our backyard or in our actual yard, but in terms of what is still going on China's end, how does
Right.
that play into this, if at all?
Well, as this Chinese CCP regime takes advantage of what it perceives as weakness coming out of this particular administration here in the United States, the CCP and the PLA are becoming ever more belligerent, not just towards Taiwan, which they are, and certainly we saw that after the inauguration of Taiwan's new president, Lai, some few weeks ago, when the PLA surrounded Taiwan with naval vessels, demonstrating how they could choke off supplies to Taiwan, which depends on food and fuel imports. They don't have enough of their
Mm-hmm.
own. And then, of course, overflights by Chinese planes, menacing, threatening Taiwan. But they're also expanding, the belligerents into what we would call the first island chain, and perhaps beyond, that lie to the east of Taiwan, and those would include allies of ours, including, of course, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, the Philippines in particular, and menacing and acting aggressively against their naval vessels and their um, uh, fishing vessels, not just naval, but fishing vessels too, and also, demonstrating aggression against um, their territory, their islands, their exclusive economic zones, for example. And beyond that first island chain is a second island chain, and there we get into, places that are actually sovereign United States territory, like Guam, Samoa, and a couple of others. But when we look at maps that the Chinese Communist Party have put out that include what they call the 9-dash line,
Mm-hmm.
that line, which is a series of dashes, 9 dashes, claims, Chinese uh, sovereignty, or at least uh, Chinese dominance over these island chains and the territories within them. So that is all aimed ultimately at denying freedom of movement, freedom of the seas within those areas to those countries that we have talked about, but in particular the United States as the predominant naval power in that area. Um, and so AUKUS, the Australian, UK, and US alliance, but also in addition to that, the Quad, as it's called, which is an alliance among India, Japan, US, and Australia. Our alliances, and those include relationships, defensive relationships with those other um, East Asian countries that I named, like South Korea and Singapore and Japan we've named, but Philippines and so forth. Those are the line of defense. Those are the alliances of defense of freedom of the seas, freedom of navigation, um, and defense of those allied nations within those areas. So that's all very important, because the ultimate aim, of course, as I said, of the Chinese Communist Party is to move further and further to the east in an aggressive, belligerent, dominating way to intimidate and force to stand down or retreat of our allies in the region, and then to demonstrate aggression and belligerence and offensive intent against these alliances that you mentioned, AUKUS and the Quad, um, and eventually, assert domination. I mean, that's the ultimate goal: domination and denial of freedom of the seas in all of these areas, South China Sea and beyond.
Only these episodes can make my blood pressure spike in 20
Sorry about
minutes.
that.
No, it's not.
But
It's
you're
not.
right. No, I mean, it should, kind of make all of our blood pressure spike a bit, or at least, increase our awareness, which is the idea.
Not your fault. You're the messenger. Um, but as I told you, somebody's coming to look at my apartment, so
Understood.
we do have to wrap it up
Okay.
sooner than later. And I promise we won't have as much of a delay between our this episode and our next episode as we had between this one and the last one. So I
Sounds
apologize
good.
for that. Yes,
No
I.
worries. No worries.
All right. Well,
We've both
guys,
been busy. All right.
we
Thank you
have.
for this one.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
we'll look forward to catching you the next time.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and guys, I apologize for the shorter episode, but we got deadlines that I can't really are out of my control. So, Claire, I will send you this episode. We will schedule the
Okay,
next one. Thank you for your
sounds good.
time. And guys, please go in the description. Please go follow her on Twitter. And Miss Lopez, you have a wonderful day. Thank you so
You
much.
too. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Guys, thank you so much for watching.